Welcome to Connect to Communities Friday Forum. We host our Friday Forums once a month during the school year to help parents, self-advocates, and service providers learn more about what's available within our region and how to navigate a meaningful life for our loved ones with disabilities. Connect to Community was founded in 2013 by a small group of parents who wanted to build a better future for their children with developmental disabilities, realizing that the supports that they had always relied upon would be gone and they would need to find other ways to create a meaningful day and a meaningful life with their loved ones within their community. Through a variety of individualized community-based initiatives, our services include educational outreach, advocacy, customized employment, creative day options, social, recreational, and service opportunities. And you can find more detailed information about what we do, and if you want to get involved and if you want to know more about what we have going, you can check out our website at connecttocommunityinc.org. A little order of business. We have, first of all, Colleen Getz is one of our CTC members, and she is facilitating running all the IT and tech stuff. Thank you, Colleen. And we will be recording this seminar so it can be viewed in the future for people who either want to refer back to it or who were not able to participate today. All our participants will remain on mute while the presenters are presenting. Please put your questions, if you have any, in the chat, and we will answer as many as we can at the end of the presentations at around 12:10 to 12:15, and then we'll wrap up at 12:30. But right now, I am pleased to introduce to you our three presenters who will be sharing information and resources about the statewide independent living centers of Illinois. John Herring is the Executive Director of Illinois Network for Centers for Independent Living, INCIL, otherwise known as. As the director, John advocates for individuals with disabilities, assisting them on their journey to become self-sufficient in their struggle for equality, equity in work, school, housing, transportation, and healthcare. In his current position, John wants to make Illinois a best practice state for centers for independent living, otherwise known as SILs. Shelley Richardson, who will be presenting second, is the Executive Director of the Statewide Independent Living Council of Illinois, otherwise known as SILC. As the Executive Director of the Statewide Independent Living Council of Illinois, Shelley partners with 22 centers for independent living and other agencies and organizations across the state to write a state plan to improve the lives of people with disabilities. She worked at Impact Center for Independent Living for 10 years as a housing specialist and a transition coordinator, moving people from institutional settings back to community living with supports. And then our last presenter, Gary Arnold, is program manager of Progress Center for Independent Living. I'm not sure if you call it PCIL or exactly how to pronounce that. As the program director that serves the suburban Cook County area of Illinois, which is staffed and governed most by people with disabilities. This center equips people with disabilities with the tools and resources to pursue independence. Gary has served as the manager of public affairs for Access Living, sat on the Little People of America LPA board of directors for 11 years, and currently represents this group on the National Disability Leadership Alliance, a coalition of 16 national organizations led by people with disabilities. Okay, so without any further ado, I present to you John Herring. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Barbara, for allowing us to present on this morning to this group. And we are happy to present information about Center for Independent Living throughout the state of Illinois. As Barbara mentioned, I am the Executive Director of the Illinois Network of Centers for Independent Living. We're commonly known as INCIL. Okay, Colleen. So just 4 facts about INCIL, I call them the 4Ws. We are a united network of 22 centers, Illinois centers of independent living. So there are 22 centers within the state of Illinois, and we cover, we service individuals in each of the centers. We service individuals with disabilities. We advocate what we do. We advocate for independence, inclusion, and integration for all people. INCIL serves as an authoritative source, a bridge builder, and a convener on critical issues facing the disability community. INCIL was established back in 1986. INCIL's office is located in Springfield, Illinois, and again, we serve all 102 Illinois counties from Cairo to Chicago. The mission of INCIL, which was adopted back in March of last year, INCIL is a united network that serves as the leading resource for Illinois Centers for Independent Living, ensuring centers have the resources needed to advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. Okay. What is INCIL? Illinois Network of CILs. We are the statewide association for the 22 centers. CILs are sometimes confused with CILs. But CILs are community-based, non-residential, non-profit organizations that are of, by, and for people with disabilities. CILs serve all people regardless of the disability type, and each CIL has a staff and board of directors that is at least 51% people with disabilities. CILs exist to help people with disabilities achieve maximum independence in work, school, housing, and every other part of life. CILs are driven by the philosophy that people with disabilities have the right and the responsibility to make choices to control the direction of their lives and to participate fully and equally in the community that they choose to live in. Each CIL has 6 core services: peer support, information and referral, individual and system advocacy, independent living skills training, and transition support. Along with these 6 core services, many of the CILs have additional services that are pertinent to the region in the area of the county that they serve. But again, each CIL is required to at least have these 6 core services. This slide, and I'm sure you will get these slides. The next slide just shows the 22 CILs, the location, give the address and phone number, and give their website information as far as where the 22 CILs throughout the state are located. Some of the CILs have satellite offices, and those offices are also located on this slide. And to end my presentation, this final slide just had my contact information. Again, we're located in Springfield, Illinois, on 828 South 2nd Street. We're in Suite 301, and we do share offices with Shelley and the Statewide Independent Living Council. I appreciate making the presentation, and as Barbara said, we will answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, John. And now I introduce Shelley Richardson of SILC.
Shelley, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the only time you won't hear me talking, because I'm talking all the time. My name is Shelley Richardson, like she said, and I'm the Executive Director of the Statewide Independent Living Council of Illinois. My preferred pronouns are she and her. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to be brief because I want to leave the lion's share of the time for Gary, because he's at the SIL that, you know, most closely is in your service area. And I'm excited for him to present. But SILC's mission is to provide the leadership, research, planning, and education required to support independent living services in Illinois. And we achieve our mission by, go to the next slide, identifying and reaching out to persons who are currently unserved and underserved by SILs. We increase awareness of independent living services and the independent living philosophy. And we help existing centers to serve persons with disabilities. And we promote the development of new centers for independent living. I will tell you that up until recently, we were not able to cover some of the counties in the most southern region of Illinois. And I'm very thankful now that we have received funding, and now we have all 102 counties served by a Center for Independent Living. So you can go to the next slide. We were formed in 1993 as a 501c3 organization. We get federal funding. Our main charge is to write a plan for independent living that improves the quality of life for all of us with disabilities across the state. The large focus areas that we work on are improving employment opportunities, housing, and transportation. And we do this plan by going out into the communities. We gather input. I send out surveys, and we get people's input on what are the problems you're facing on a day-to-day basis. What needs to change for things to be better? And then we come back, and with the 22 centers for independent living, you can go to the next slide. With the 22 centers for independent living, and John at INCIL and a lot of other organizations across the state agencies and organizations, we come together then to brainstorm, and we write that plan, and it is submitted to the state and the federal government. And then our role after writing the plan, and we're continuously writing a plan because it's a 3-year plan. And by the time the end of the 3-year cycle is up, you've already got to have a new plan going. So we work with the 22 centers, and we write this plan. We do not provide direct services. We are a planning body. So that is our charge. When we're not writing the plan, then we are monitoring the implementation of the plan. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so what we do is provide a lot of support to center staff, and to for them to more readily serve their consumers in their service area. We also do a lot of education about independent living services. As you can tell, I haven't had my coffee, so I'm kind of stumbling around my words, but we do a lot of trainings. For instance, we did a training not too long ago with Great Lakes ADA and vocational rehabilitation services and some employers. And it was a webinar that was directed to employers, and it was very well attended, to employers that were thinking about hiring people with disabilities. And so we just laid out all of the wonderful things that a person with a disability can bring to the workforce. We did an emergency preparedness webinar a while back for people with disabilities. And we're doing one again next week that focuses on immigrants with disabilities, emergency preparedness. So we're always doing trainings. We're doing things that support the state plan for independent living. You can go to the next slide. as John said, we work closely together, and I'm so glad we finally are sharing offices. It makes it so much easier. But my job is to totally support the Centers for Independent Living and to make everything run as smoothly as I can for them and come in and support whatever they're doing. We also do a lot of education with legislators, reaching out and educating them on manners of disability, things like that. You can go to the next slide. And that's it. And that is me. That's my contact information. I would invite you to go on SILC's website. It's Statewide Independent Living Council, silcofillinois.org. There you will have access to many training videos that we've done. We just finished one on riding a fixed route bus. But please take a look at the state plan. I think you'll find it interesting, and avail yourself of the webinars and things that we have on there. They're very interesting and informative. And I want to thank you all for your time today.
Thank you very much, Shelley. That was great. All right, we're going to jump right into Gary Arnold's presentation from Progress Center for Independent Living. Thanks, Gary. You want to unmute? There you go.
All right. Okay, great. This is
Awesome.
Gary Arnold speaking. Thank you. As others have said, I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day today to attend this, particularly on a Friday. I think that's should be congratulated. So thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to learn about what Centers for Independent Living have to offer, and I'm really happy to be here. And although John, Shelley, and I work together quite a bit, this is the first time we've presented together, so I'm really excited about that. And one other thing I want to mention before I dive into it is I appreciate remote options and virtual options. In many ways, it's opened up so many doors and opportunities, but I kind of wish we were in person today. Because Shelley mentioned the coffee, and I've got my second pot of coffee. I'm working from home today. I'm just outside of my kitchen, and the second pot is right there, though. So I wish I could offer you a cup right now, Shelley, but maybe another time. But I'll get into it. My name's Gary Arnold. I work at Progress Center for Independent Living, which is the independent living center that serves all of suburban Cook County. So Northwest Cook County, the suburbs up there, Palatine and others are within our service area. So if ever there's a need to reach out to Progress Center, we are the one. Next slide is great. Thank you. You can move on to slide number 2. Physically, at this point, we have two offices that we work out of in order to serve suburban Cook County. Our main office, where the majority of the staff work from, is in Forest Park, Illinois. And Forest Park is a near western suburb, just on the other side of Oak Park, and Oak Park borders Chicago. And we also have an office based in the south or southwest suburbs, Blue Island, Illinois. And although we still do a lot of remote work today, as we're hopefully winding down the pandemic, it does make a difference to have a physical office space. And my hope is, someday that we do have an office either in the northwestern suburbs or the north suburbs that will position us to do a more thorough job of providing services to the disability community in the north and the northwest. Because although we're able to do a lot remotely, it's hard to replace kind of a physical presence sometimes. And one of the great things about a physical presence, in this photograph here, this image for this slide is just this past holiday season in December. Forest Park has an annual holiday window of lights, I think it's called, where along the main drag, a lot of the businesses open up and decorate their windows and invite people to check out what they have to offer. And we typically like to set up a table, and hundreds or thousands of people attend that event, whether it's 0 degrees or 32 degrees the first weekend of December. So I look forward to someday having events like that in the north or northwest suburbs. But yeah, we have the 2 offices right now. We have about 20 full and part-time staff working between those 2 offices. So if you can go to the next slide now. Okay, I think this was covered already, but the mission of Progress Center and all centers for independent living, we're all going to write our own mission statements a little bit differently, but philosophically, we all have the same responsibility of providing people with disabilities with tools and resources to be independent in communities of their choice, and preferably the least restrictive setting, most integrated setting. Next slide, please. I want to just talk a little bit about the histories of centers for independent living. I personally think it's a fairly interesting history, and it really kind of gets to kind of the core of maybe what separates centers for independent living from some other organizations and entities, within the disability community, and makes centers unique in their own way. This is a couple of photographs on this slide taken in the late 1960s or early 1970s on the campus of Berkeley University in Berkeley, California. And when people talk about the history of centers for independent living, oftentimes they, trace that history back to the Berkeley campus, where there were a number of students with disabilities who many of whom, kind of had to fight their way onto the campus for both social reasons, the admissions and leadership of the university not being ready or willing to accept people with disabilities into their programs, into their university, as well as physical barriers physical inaccessibility around the campus. But a number of students managed to navigate those barriers and find themselves as students on the campus. And one thing that turned out to be kind of a silver lining regarding the physical inaccessibility of the campus is that all of the students with disabilities kind of had to be housed in the same place, because there was very limited options on the campus that were physically accessible. So they're housed in the same place. And that got them to organizing together, talking together, sharing their experiences and learning things from those experiences, and, building strategies around their experiences and their needs. And so this group of students began to make changes on campus and began to advocate for themselves as a group of students with disabilities. And what began to happen was that word of what was happening spread beyond the campus. And so members of the disability community who maybe were in the Bay Area, but might not have been students at Berkeley University, found out what was going on. And it was really exciting for them what they heard, and they wanted to be a part of it. And so they started showing up on campus. And that really kind of underscored this need for what was happening on the campus to also be happening in the Bay Area. And so that, many more factors were involved, but, in a nutshell, that kind of led to the opening of the very first Center for Independent Living in 1972. And the powers that be recognized that what was happening there was important, and there was a need for that in other places around the country. And so money was earmarked by the federal government to establish other centers, and they started popping up around the country. And so now, as a result of what happened on Berkeley in the early 1970s, there are 400 centers for independent living around the country today, and there are 22 in the state of Illinois. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and a couple of kind of the philosophical things that came out of the establishment of centers for independent living, and I'm sure other movements and other work within the disability community contributed to this as well. But these are a couple of more things that kind of are unique in some ways to the work of Centers for Independent Living and what some people refer to as the independent living movement. And that is, the people who got things started really wanted to take on this principle of nothing about us without us, historically, and, in many ways, even today, a lot of decisions were made and are made for people with disabilities by not the people with disabilities themselves, but by other people. That could be lawyers, that could be doctors, that could be parents, could be guardians, whomever it could be. But especially historically, people with disabilities often weren't the ones making decisions that impact people with disabilities. So this is really one of the kind of important philosophical pieces of the work of Centers for Independent Living is consumer control, and that decisions that impact people with disabilities should be, if at all possible, we should exhaust every avenue to empower people to affect decisions that impact their own lives. And another piece is that, and again, I would say even today, a lot of times people are kind of hesitant to identify as disabled or to say the word disability because of the negative stigma associated with the word. And that's because there's a lot of historical baggage there where disability was portrayed in a traditionally a negative way. And so with the work of Centers for Independent Living and people in the independent living movement, they really tried to kind of confront that traditional negative stereotype and try to project the idea and the message that disability is not something that's taboo. It shouldn't be thought of as a negative. It might impact our lives in such a way to make things more challenging, some things more challenging, but it's also a natural part of life. And if it doesn't affect us directly, it's probably going to affect someone we are close to, someone we know well directly at some point in their lives. And so it's going to affect all of us at one point or another. And so we're kind of better off if we kind of embrace the idea of disability and get comfortable with it rather than treating it as a negative stigma or a taboo. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this was covered already, I think, but in order to kind of follow through on that principle of nothing about us without us, making sure that people with disabilities are involved in decisions that impact people with disabilities, one of the requirements of all Centers for Independent Living is that they be governed and staffed by a majority of people with disabilities. So more than 50% of the staff at Progress Center and all centers for independent living across the country need to be people with disabilities, and more than 50% of all board of directors that serve for centers for independent living need to be people with disabilities. Next slide, please. Okay, and I think it was John that covered this, the core services of all independent living centers. Each center is has to provide these core services. And so that is one thing that kind of unifies all centers for independent living, makes us all similar in some way. But then we kind of build our services that we provide a little bit differently depending on the people in our service area, the number of people in our service area. Some of us serve urban areas, some of us serve maybe more rural areas. Some centers have access to more funding opportunities than others. Some centers have, development departments as a result of that, and others don't. And so each center is going to look a little bit different in terms of the actual services they provide. But each of us is expected to build our services around these core areas here. So now, next slide, please. Most of the next piece of part of my presentation is going to kind of cover Progress Center's kind of day-to-day services and what we do, to build our what we offer to the community around those five core services. So most of the contact that we have with community in suburban Cook County, and sometimes we go outside of suburban Cook County. We might get contacted by someone on the farther west side of Chicago, or maybe on the other side of Cook County in DuPage County, and we're still able to work with them. Usually if we get more involved with that person, then we'll check in with the other Center for Independent Living and just make sure they're aware of it and okay with it. But most of the contact we have, whether that be direct contact, somebody coming into the office, or a meeting with somebody, or someone calling up on the phone, or sending us an email, is through information and referral. And typically, we provide around 1,000 or so kind of specific information referral services every year. And that's usually, somebody contacting us with questions in the area of, one of those six bullet points that I have on the right of the slide: housing, transportation, healthcare, employment, education, and civil rights. And oftentimes, they might have a question or might be looking for something that might fall outside of something that we can offer, or it might be they're just looking for a bit of information. And so we'll do our best to provide that information to the individual or to the group that contacts us, or what we'll do is make a referral to another agency that might be better suited or have better capacity to provide what they're looking for. A good example of that is housing. Just with the state of things, whether you're disabled or you're non-disabled, housing is a very critical need for people in suburban Cook County. And with the disability community, oftentimes that need might be a little bit more critical, or the need might be a little, being able to respond to that need might be a little bit more challenging, because a lot of people with disabilities are low income. Their income might be coming from some sort of benefits program, which doesn't really provide enough income to get rent an apartment that is market rate, and so the availability is much more limited. Oftentimes we'll need a subsidy in order to go along with it. And then oftentimes people will be looking for housing that has some sort of accommodation attached to it. Maybe it's physical accessibility, or it might be some other type of accommodation. And we don't operate with a housing stock ourselves at Progress Center. And so what we traditionally do is we help, either refer people out to another agency that can has more resources to work with people through the housing process, or refer people out to a group that has housing stock of their own, or we'll work with people to sign up for various kind of resources around in the state of Illinois. One of those resources that some of you on this call might be familiar with is called the Statewide Referral Network. And that is a housing referral network that is across Illinois, where you can register for, you put in a lot of, your demographic, financial information, benefits information, and you plug in where you're interested in finding housing. And then with the providers that are connected, the housing providers that are connected to that network, when something becomes available in their area with them, that pops up, and then the people within that network that are registered for it, if they've identified that area as an area where they're interested in living, then theoretically, we should be notified for it if we help them sign up, and that individual should be notified so then they can make an application. So we help a lot of people sign up for that. We help people kind of apply for housing vouchers, or we make referrals, like I said before, to other housing agencies. So that's kind of one of the biggest needs we have, and we also get a lot of people coming to us in the area of employment. And unfortunately, again, as I'm sure many of you know, employment's been one of the most significant issues in the disability community for years and years, and even with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and one of the titles specifically looking at housing and employment, and all kinds of programs set up that are designed to support people with disabilities in employment. It still remains today a very significant issues, and a lot of people struggle to find employment. So we work with some people one-on-one in terms of helping them through the process of finding employment, but then that's another area where we make a lot of referrals. So that's a little bit about our information referral work. We can go to the next slide. And also this is kind of an overlap between information and referral, as well as independent living services. One area that makes Progress Center a little unique from other centers for independent living. I used to work at the Center for Independent Living that serves the Chicago metropolitan area, and that's called Access Living. And at Access Living, we did not have benefits counselors on staff, and at Progress Center we do. We've got actually 4 benefits counselors on staff, and benefits counselors are people who are trained to assist in the process of kind of looking at what's out there in terms of benefits like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, transportation benefits, kind of looking at the different programs, helping people evaluate what their options might be within those programs, and then helping people register and sign up for those programs. And then, sometimes we'll continue working with them and help them navigate those programs once they're a part of that. So that's something where sometimes we'll work with people who maybe we work with over an extended period of time, where we help them apply and then they continue to work with them. Other times we kind of, point the people in the appropriate direction, and then they're, they feel like they have what they need to take it from there on their own. So that kind of separates, sometimes it's just an information and referral, where we kind of give them information and then they're equipped to go on their own. And then sometimes where we work with them more over the long term with that. I know there's time for a question and answer later, but I just saw something pop up in the chat, and yeah, people can feel free, to contact Progress Center if there's not a benefits counseling program in their area with their local Center for Independent Living. And sometimes other agencies also have benefits counselors. Oftentimes it's a lot of benefit counseling happens within the senior population. And so that area agency on aging will also have benefits counselors. For our area where we are, I'm not sure if it covers the northwestern suburbs, but it's an agency called Age Options, which is based in Oak Park, which is a neighbor of Forest Park. But yeah, feel free to contact Progress Center, and we can either refer you out or one of our counselors can support you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I talked about our information referral, and now I'm going to go a little bit more into independent living skills training. Some centers for independent living kind of have standard courses that they offer on an annual basis, or maybe a number of different times a year. And we used to have a course for people who are making the transition out of nursing homes or other long-term care type institutions into the community. That kind of and the idea of that course would be to equip people with skills that will be needed when they're on their own. So it could be something like, budgeting, making lists, banking, balancing a checkbook, meal preparation, kind of that kind of thing. We kind of do it more on a kind of on-demand basis, one-on-one basis, but sometimes developing courses based upon need. But typically what we do is, if we start working with somebody, we kind of develop goals for them based upon what it is specifically they're looking for. And then kind of develop kind of informal curriculum or strategy around that to then kind of help them build those skills. But sometimes though, we do build courses, and one thing we're actually looking at doing is we've had a couple of people approach us recently looking for a course around and some skills building around money management and managing funds in order to kind of not live month to month and worrying about funds over the long term, but kind of plan for a more secure future. So we've had a couple of people who took a few financial courses a few years ago and are equipped to do this kind of training. So starting in April, we're actually looking at offering a course that will be a few weeks long around money management and financial skills. So stay tuned for that if anyone might know people who are interested in that. And then, we also worked with a group called the South Suburban Special Recreation Association last year. And they came to us and wanting us to build a course for some of their participants because they were still working remotely. And so we offered a 7-week and a 5-week course for them. So traditionally, that's usually how we do it in terms of building independent living skills plans, either one-on-one for people or for different groups. Okay, next slide, please. Another, and I in preparation for this, I was told that this might be an area of interest. We do personal assistant recruitment and referral for people. Most of our work is within what's called the Home Services Program in Illinois. And Home Services is a program through the Department of Rehabilitation in the state of Illinois, where people with disabilities can apply for it. They get assessed, and then if they qualify, they are enrolled then in the Home Services Program and are eligible to start hiring their own personal assistants. And personal assistants are the people who come into the home, typically it's the home, and help out with activities of daily living that support somebody living independently. And I know in other communities, it might be direct support professionals is how we refer to the people who come into the home to do the work, or sometimes people hire homemakers. And with all cases, we can provide some amount of support in helping people secure people to come into the home and help out with those day-to-day activities. But most of our work is through the Home Services Program, and for that we recruit personal assistants to attend an orientation. And then once they attend an orientation, then they become a part of our pool of people who then can be referred out to people with disabilities living in the community who are looking for that kind of support. And I'll be honest with you though right now, and again, I'm sure many of you are aware of this, these days it's pretty difficult to find and maintain the support of personal assistants. I think there's all kinds of factors involved in that. But the pool is thin these days, and we get a lot of people contacting us looking for personal assistance, and we're doing the best we can to recruit new people and to maintain the pool we have and respond to those requests that we're getting. I would encourage all of you just to keep your eye on the chat. I know there's a lot of activity going on. I'll stop popping it up there like with other resources out there right now. So that looks like it's good stuff in the chat right now. Okay, next slide, please. The third core service area is peer support. And that's one of those areas that really kind of, again, gets at what a unique piece of independent living centers, because peer support is this idea of getting people with disabilities together so that they can share stories together, learn from other people with disabilities, bring up concerns and questions that you might have, so you can hear directly from other people with disabilities. So we have developed 5 different peer support groups at Progress Center. Some of them meet monthly, some of them are meeting weekly at this point, and some of them are very specific, like the Latino support group. That's specifically, it's actually geared toward parents of young people who are disabled and Latino. That's a group that meets once a month, and that's a group that actually has some of our the highest participation. Sometimes we get up to 40 people a month participating in that, and that's typically like parents coming, who have questions about their children's experiences in the schools with IEPs, with 504 plans, or with other areas. We have a home services support group that meets monthly also. That's our newest group. I'm really happy that we developed that one because, as I said earlier, it's a real struggle these days for a lot of people who are trying to hire their own personal assistants or homemakers. They're struggling to do that. And so we created this group that meets once a month for people to kind of come together and kind of share strategies, like what's working for you, what's not working for you. And it's, I'm glad we're having it, but sometimes the stories are really difficult because we get people who come in who say, I've been looking for months, for a PA and I haven't been able to find one. But last month we had a presentation from somebody who is successful often at hiring new personal assistants. And she did a presentations about some of the strategies that she uses and how she approaches different situations. And so it was really, a good presentation, and I was really happy that we had this opportunity for people to hear directly from another person who uses these services to hear about what's working for them. We've got a group, dynamic people with disabilities, the peer support and art group, and the community check-in. Those are 3 different groups that are open for anyone with any type of disability. It's anyone, if an ally or a supporter of people with disabilities, also welcome to join those groups. These groups they meet either weekly or monthly, and typically the agenda is usually wide open, and we talk about what's on people's mind, what they want to bring up. The art group, though, we do try to integrate some art into it. Usually what we do is we follow somebody on YouTube who has a series of different lessons about drawing or something like that. And then, we'll watch that lesson, which is typically pretty short. We'll have some time to work on our own doing artwork, and then some time to share, but then a lot of time also just for discussion about whatever might be on people's minds. Okay, next slide, please. The next area of core services is advocacy, and we have 3 community organizers on staff, and their job, kind of falls under the umbrella of advocacy, where they'll work one-on-one with people on different issues that the individuals might be having. And then we'll also do coalition work or community work with other organizations to try to address issues systemically and try to address barriers to independence that might be out there in the community. And usually our work falls under these areas that are listed on the slide. Again, these are similar issue areas to our other work, but housing. Oh, I'm very excited. My phone is ringing right now on the subject of advocacy, and it's a phone call coming in from Senator Harman's office. And one of the advocacy issues we're working on right now is legislation in Illinois, which is called source of income legislation, which it prohibits discrimination based on source of income in the area of housing. And so a lot of people with vouchers experience discrimination in housing. And so we asked his office for a meeting on this piece of legislation. I'm hoping they call me back to say, yes, we'd love to meet with you, but we'll see. And in this photograph right here on this slide is a protest or a demonstration that was held earlier on in the pandemic up in Chicago. There's a lot of, we're struggling with nursing homes right now, and the people with disabilities and seniors in nursing homes, and the threat to people to COVID-19. And we are kind of urging the state to do more to address that threat. Okay, next slide 2, please. And one of the things that we do also under the realm of advocacy that also overlaps a little bit with independent living skills is that we have a legislative training now 3 times a year. It's a 7-week course that we offer in the spring, summer, and fall. Kind of goes, it's an introduction to the legislative process, an introduction to disability rights and legislation that protects people with disabilities, and also kind of an introduction to self-advocacy. So that's a course that's once a week for about an hour and a half, and the next one's actually starting up in early April. So we're in the process of recruiting for that right now. Again, you know, downsides and upsides to our remote work. One of the upside with the legislative training, it's allowed us to kind of get more people involved who might not have been able otherwise to come to our office for legislative training. But on the downside, the training used to conclude with a trip. You know, we jump on the Amtrak and we go to Springfield and spend a day with the legislators at the state capitol, and, you know, and visit their offices and have a rally and, you know, talk about disability issues. Unfortunately, you know, we haven't been able to do that for a couple of years now, but you know, hopefully in the future we'll be able to pick that up again. Okay, next slide, please. And, you know, finally, the last core services, and, you know, two pieces of this is the transition services. All centers provide transition services, and there's 2 pieces of that. One is, you know, transitioning people out of congregate care settings or long-term care institutions, like nursing homes. So if you can go to the next slide. At Progress Center, we're kind of in a unique and in some ways difficult position in suburban Cook County, because, you know, as again, I'm guessing many of you, you know, might have heard of or be familiar with the 3 consent decrees, or at least maybe one of the consent decrees that applies to people with disabilities in long-term care settings. You know, the Legis consent decree, the Williams consent decree, and the Colbert consent decree. All those decrees are telling the state of Illinois, you know, you need to be transitioning people out and providing those transition services in a supportive, thorough way, so that people can be successful once they transition out of the long-term care facility. In suburban Cook County, it's other agencies. It used to be the managed care organizations. Now it kind of goes, it's not just managed care organizations, it's others as well, who have contracts with the state of Illinois to provide those transition services. So Progress Center will do those transition services directly if a class member of one of those consent decrees chooses to opt out of that consent decree. We advise people not to opt out of that the consent decree, though, because, you know, by doing so, you know, they're kind of losing a lot of the benefits of what comes out of becoming a class member, where they're working with an agency. That agency comes, you know, with housing resources, with, you know, health support resources in the community and things like that. You know, if they choose to opt out and then they want to work with Progress Center on it, and we have to, you know, kind of piecemeal find all of those services and connect people, you know, with those services, which we, you know, are happy to do if that's the decision that people make. But we advise people, you know, to try to find a way to make it work as part of as a class member and with the agency, the lead agency that they're assigned. Oftentimes, though, people are frustrated with that agency for one reason or another, and it might be for circumstances outside of that agency's control. And in cases like that, then we try to play the role of advocate, where we just try to, facilitate communication and make sure that the concerns of the individual class member are being heard with the lead agency under the consent decree. So we work with a fair number of people who are in the process of transitioning, but oftentimes these are people who are in the consent decrees, are class members, and our job is just saying, okay, where are the gaps? How can we as an agency help fill those gaps? Okay, next slide, please. And then also the youth transition services, the final piece of the core services of all centers for independent living. Most of our youth transition work is through a contract with the state of Illinois, and that contract is called the Fast Track contract, and that's where we typically we try to partner up with schools. Could be a high school, it could be a college in suburban Cook County, and we offer these what are called pre-employment transition services to the young people. Could be introduction to self-advocacy. It could be counseling on post-secondary education. That basically means like getting ready for college, helping research options that might be good, helping to find disability services that might be available at the college or university where the person might want to go, and also maybe looking into funding opportunities that might be available specific to a person's status as someone with a disability. And then also 3 areas in the kind of employment area. Job, searching for jobs, getting ready for jobs, and then that kind of direct workplace experience. Next slide, please. So yeah, that is Fast Track. I kind of went over those 5 core services of Fast Track, but in a nutshell, what that program is a program that equips young people with disabilities with independent living, self-advocacy, and job readiness skills. Next slide, please. The one caveat to this Fast Track program is that it's fairly restrictive in some ways. Unfortunately, there's a age requirement, or there's a criteria. You can't be younger than 14 and you can't be older than 21. You have to be enrolled in some sort of an academic program. You have to show proof of disability. Most of our programs, proof is not required. All you need to do is kind of identify as having, personally identify as being a part of the disability community. But with this program, you do need some sort of verification. And the most kind of restrictive of the requirements is like only young people who have not already opened a case with the state of Illinois' Department of Rehabilitation program are eligible for the program. So a lot of schools in suburban Cook County have a transition program already within their schools, and that school is and those programs are connected to the state of Illinois' vocational rehabilitation program. And if that's the case, then they're ineligible for our Fast Track program. That's kind of an unfortunate thing, but it's also the other side of that is oftentimes these transition programs within high schools are already provide the same thing that the Fast Track program would provide. The one thing that's a little bit more unique is the self-advocacy piece of it. So what we try to do is we try to engage students when they're younger, sometimes even before they even enter the high schools, before they've entered that high school transition program through vocational rehabilitation, sign them up and then at least get them involved with our self-advocacy piece, because there's also often the self-advocacy piece that's not offered at the high school transition program. That way they're ready to go. They've got that kind of under their belt, and then they're in a good position if they want to then transition to the high school transition program. But sometimes high schools, they've got students with disabilities there who aren't a part of their transition program there. And so we get to work with them. And then sometimes we work, not through a high school, but just with individual students who were referred to, and we end up working with them. Okay, so next slide, please. So I said, most of our work, our youth transition work, is through the fast track program, and that's got some kind of strict criteria to it, but that does not preclude us from kind of working one-on-one with young people who might already be a part of a transition program, and so who might be ineligible for fast track, but if they're looking for something else that's not offered in their high school transition program, or maybe they've just finished high school and they're still looking for some kind of support, and they're still young, we can work with them and maybe set up a more individualized plan based upon their needs, and try to find resources and work with them on building skills based on what they're looking for. We get some people, young people who are out of high school now, looking for work, and so maybe we'll try to find them to connect them to appropriate programs. Or we get students sometimes in high school programs but don't feel like their specific interest areas are being addressed. So we might be working with them and trying to, again, maybe find something that's out there already that addresses those specific interests, or try to build something internally at Progress Center to meet those specific interests. Okay, next slide, please. And I think I'm supposed to finish at 12:10, so I'm running out of time. So I'll just go really quickly. I just wanted to quickly mention a few things more about Progress Center. Like a lot of groups, we've tried to build capacity with the pandemic and meet emerging needs of people that came out of the pandemic. So one thing we've been able to do is build a supply of personal protective equipment. So we have that on hand, where we kind of fulfill individual requests that people have for masks or for other equipment like hand sanitizer, gloves, things like that. We do individual mailings to people, and sometimes we're contacted by other community-based organizations who might be looking for larger quantities of KN95 masks or something like that. So that's something that we try to respond to those needs, and we're looking at continuing to build our capacity, so we'll be able to continue to do that in the future. And we also, sometimes people need a little bit of technical assistance when it comes to scheduling vaccines, scheduling tests, or advocating for something related to the pandemic. And we try to help people navigate those things and help them secure what it is they're looking for. And next slide. And I wanted to give a shout out to our executive director. One thing he's been doing for a long time that is, again, I think unique for Progress Center. Even before he was the executive director at Progress Center, he produces and hosts a weekly radio program where he talks, it's a Spanish language program where interviews a lot of different people and shares a lot of information that is relevant and benefits the disability community. That's on Saturday mornings on Univision 1200 AM. And next slide. And that brings us to the end. So I think, yeah, I think the timing, I hope, is pretty good there. But I'm done. So I just want to thank everyone again for your time. And I'm happy to answer any questions or refer them all to Shelley, who maybe has had coffee now. Just kidding.
Thank you so much, Gary. So I'll just run through. There's questions in the chat, and then there's been a few sent to me individually to keep it all moving along here. So let's see what we'll start with. So we had a question that is addressed to John, but I think it can be answered by anybody. You mentioned 6 core services. I missed the 6th one. Could you elaborate on the 6th core service? And I guess we'll need you to unmute, John.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I meant 5. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay. Yeah, and I think when I looked through there for the questioner, I think transition, you kind of break that into 2,
Yeah,
correct?
right. Yeah, transition from nursing home to community, and then transition from high school to either work or post-secondary.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I have a question for Shelley. Folks are interested in what other organizations in Illinois do you collaborate with? And then a follow-up is the presentations that you mentioned about employment, emergency preparedness, et cetera. They sound very useful. Who do you present to? Are these presentations made to groups, or are they simply online, made available online?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Now I was trying to get off of mute. So could you repeat that question about the presentations?
Sure, absolutely. So the question is, it's a 2-part question. The first is, what other organizations in Illinois do you collaborate with? And the second part of the question is, these presentations you mentioned about employment and emergency preparedness of people with disability, who do you make those presentations to?
We send them invitations out through all networks, the DD Council and all of the CILs and CIL staff, and they in turn send them out to their consumers that they have email contact with. And it's when we make the presentations, they're open to everyone. I also I'm on the Statewide Rehabilitation Council. So we have a lot of statewide representation and people coming in from different communities to work on the vocation rehabilitation in the state. And so it goes out to all of them too. And usually we record them, and you can get a copy of the recording on our website. The other agencies that we partner with could be Illinois, Illinois RTAC. They're the Rural Transit Assistance Center. We do with Great Lakes ADA, Hope Fair Housing, Illinois Assistive Technology Program. We've partnered with the Department of Mental Health. Just any agency that we feel like could bring an appropriate training to our consumers and our centers and center staff, that's who we partner with. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, I think it did. Thank you. Okay, so let me see where we are. here's a question. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular. Do you see individuals who received home-based services through DHS or PUNS using Center for Independent Living Services?
Yet they do. Many of the people that we transition from nursing home to the community are on the DHS list. Many of the people that, well, all of the people that we provide personal assistance to that Gary talked about, they're also a part of DHS.
Okay, great. Gary, I think this question is for you. If we talked about the shortage of personal assistant resources, do you have, or have you thought of any training programs for parents so that parents can continue the ADL and living skills development of their children?
Okay, there we go. I think I'm not sure if the question specifically is about I believe, I might be wrong, Shelley or John can help me with this, but a parent can serve as the personal assistant for a child. So they could, take an orientation and then apply, to be a personal assistant through the home services program. And then once you're approved by the state, then you can, start to be paid by the program and serve as a personal assistant. I believe it's brothers and sisters maybe that cannot fulfill that role as a personal assistant, but I might have it there. I might be mixed up there. But I know a family member, whether it be a brother or sister or a parent, can provide the personal assistant services and role and be paid for it. There's not the expectation by the state that it be kind of volunteer or family work. And the orientations are kind of designed to provide that training, and then also there can be there's opportunity through I think there's the SEIU union in the state of Illinois can also provide kind of specific trainings about how to actually perform some of those activity of daily living supports.
Yeah, Gary, you are correct. And there, we would encourage even the parents if they would go through the training that the CILs are offering so that they can be put on the waiting list. And then, of course, if you're a parent, you're going to be taken right off the waiting list because you will be hired by your child. In addition to that, for those who may not know, that legislation, I don't know if it's been passed yet, but there is legislation that will allow spouses to become personal assistant to their spouse. So.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, John. Here's a new question from Melissa, not directed at anyone in particular, so feel free, any of you, to answer. If we are at the beginning of the housing search, can your company help us? We don't even know where to start.
I think that would be a yes. I don't know where what county you're in, but if you were to call the CIL that represents your county, they could give you some direction. Either they would be able to help you, or they would refer you to someone that could.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, this is for Gary. You mentioned the benefits counselors that were available, and I think you even supplemented that by saying if somebody is in a district where they didn't have benefit counselors, they could avail themselves of those in your area. Can they help with things such as an SSI appeal or those types of matters?
This is Gary speaking. Yes. Is the answer to that question. Yeah, I often hear when we do check-ins together, the benefits counseling staff, they'll often share stories about appeals happening. So yes, is the short answer to that.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Colleen, I saw where Melissa put in the chat that she's in Suburban Cook. So Melissa, that would be Gary.
Yeah.
You would be contacting.
Okay, here's another question. Let's see. So here's a question about the fees for your services. Are they posted in your website? And can we register adult children for your courses or services through the website?
I believe I'm still off mute. Good. Yeah, there's no fees. No Center for Independent Living will typically charge a fee for services. We get our funding through grants provided by or contracts in different areas. So there's not a fee and our website's not sophisticated enough. I apologize to register online for any course. So the best way to do is just to contact a staff person, or you can start with me and I can direct you to the right person, by email, and then we'll find out what you're interested in and then direct you to the appropriate person. I'm putting my email in the chat.
And another question, Gary, that came in is the financial training that you mentioned in April, is that virtual or in person or a combination?
That will be, yeah, remote or virtual. We are starting, kind of on an informal way, telling people, if you want to come into the office for this, you're welcome to do it. For some of our support groups, we're doing that. While not really formally putting it out there on our website or things like that. But it definitely, there's a remote option.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've covered all of the questions. I want to thank all of you for participating, and thank you very much, Shelley, John, and Gary. Very informative, lots of resources that, boy, so many of us had no idea were available. And to think that it's grant funded and free, and it's really self-directed, is really impressive. Can't thank you enough. Thank you very, very much. I know everyone will be reaching out to you. You guys are going to be busy.
Well, I do want to tell you now, you will be on, I will put you on my email list when we're presenting trainings and things like that. That way you can send it out to your network here.
That would be great. We would love to do that. We will forward all of that to our database as well. Thank you, everyone.
And Barbara, I would just like to say, I know the majority of the individuals on here are from suburban Cook counties, but for some reason, if you're not from suburban Cook County, you can go to our website, www.incil.org. And that will direct you to the CIL that serves your county.
Great, thank you very much. And I can't say enough about this. And speaking of advocacy and supporting people, Colleen sits on the Clearbrook Legislative Advocacy Team and would like to share some current things that are coming up that has 1 month to take action. Colleen?
Yes, so real quickly, last night I met with this core group of folks that are committed to kind of getting the word out how to improve Illinois' support of individuals with developmental disabilities, and how we can, as parents and allies and caregivers and professionals, how can we rally and really improve the way that our state funds these much needed services. And so in that regard, Clearbrook has taken forth this advocacy effort. I am going to post the this link in the chat here, and also you may be getting some emails or some notifications from CTC, just encouraging people to contact their legislators and ask them to support the initiatives that are currently being put forth in the budget, just by way of context around what's going on. Governor Pritzker's budget has approved $94.8 million towards the funding of these services that have been recommended through the Guidehouse study. And while when I first heard that, that sounds like a lot of money, it's 38% of what has been determined is needed to help the folks that are impacted by the staffing shortages and all of the underfunding that has historically plagued the disabled community. So the amount that is being asked for is $246.8 million. And when I was thinking about this last night, I tried to put it into a way that I could understand it and wrap my head around it, just as the parent of a young person with disabilities. And if there's 10 things that my daughter needs, basically the budget right now is asking me to pick 3.8 of those things for her. And the 10 things are critical. It's not like these are nice to haves, these are must haves. So it's sort of like out of the universe of what your loved one needs, pick 3.8 of those, and that might be what you get going forward. So if that bothers you, or if that upsets you, or if you think that's wrong, then I would just urge you to step up and do the one click. I did explain to the folks running these efforts that we are exhausted, regularly committed, but exhausted. So we can't really push the responsibility to invest a lot of time, et cetera, but we definitely care. Nobody cares more than us, right? So if you click on the link, you can fill out your name, you can fill out your address. It will connect you to who your legislators are. If you hit the button, it will send the email asking your legislators to support. It couldn't be easier. There's even more you could do. There's a phone call button. There's a video button. You could record a video telling your story. And I think, as we all know, the people who ask for it are the people who get it. And I think that right now, the goal is that we need to be asking. We need to be asking for our loved ones who can't ask for themselves. And so that would be the plea. And if you're so inclined, we'd be very grateful. I am going to copy this link in the chat. And also, if you keep your eyes open, I'm sure you'll see more about this. I guess the last thing I'll say on this is there's not a lot of time. April 8th is when the General Assembly, I believe, is going to be wrapping for the year, because everybody's going back home to campaign. So we want to make sure that between now and April 8th is when we're doing this. You can click more than once, not maybe multiple times a day, but more than, you can do this daily or weekly. It will just let people know that this is an important issue and we want people to pay attention. So thank you very much for your support, and let me figure out how to get this in there, and there we go. Hold on, Barb, I think you're muted.
Thank you. This isn't asking for a tax increase. This is just saying, can we have a bigger piece of what the surplus funds are for our loved ones, so that they have better health, better care, a better life. So great. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch about April.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.